My name is Nick Paumgarten. I'm a staff writer at the New Yorker magazine, the host of this summit. I have here with me two men who called this financial collapse early and often and with great eloquence. Now, the problem with earning the right to say "I told you so" is that we all then expect them to tell us so again and again. So here we are, wondering what they're going to tell us this time. To my immediate right is Robert Shiller, a professor of economics at Yale and also at the Yale School of Management, the business school. He is a founder of the firm Macro Markets, LLC, and also of the Case-Shiller Home Prices Indices. He is a best-selling author. His book, Irrational Exuberance, in the year 2000, summed up the stock market bubble of the 90s and bubbles in general. The second edition, which he published in 2005, laid out the scenario of the real estate collapse, which we've just experienced the effects of. His most recent book with George Akerlof is Animal Spirits: How Human Psychology Drives the Economy and Why It Matters for Global Capitalism. To my far right is Nassim Taleb. I have to be careful what I call him so he doesn't get annoyed with me. He too is a professor of risk engineering at NYU's Polytechnic Institute, and he's an author of, to name a couple of books, the wonderful book Fooled by Randomness, and most recently the bestseller The Black Swan. He is an options trader. His primary interest is chance, which means he's into mathematics, psychology, epistemology, a lot of things, as well as finance. But maybe he's best described as a provocateur, as he declares at the top of his messy website, and don't suggest that he tidy it up. My major hobby is teasing people who take themselves and the quality of their knowledge too seriously. My first question, and we may not even get past this one because we have 26 minutes. And this is a big one, and it concerns some of what Malcolm just talked about, is about confidence. On Thursday, we get the results of the so-called stress test from the banks, which may tell us as much about what the government and the banks want us to think about the banks as it does about the banks themselves. At any rate, the stock market seems pleased with the early signs, with the early reports as to what these stress tests might tell us. As far as consumers are concerned, Bob, you had a column in the Times over the weekend. It was about predicting depressions and people's sense of whether depression will happen or not. He noted that people aren't as afraid of a depression as they have been in past recessions, even though the fundamentals this time may be worse. That is, people, and I'm not sure who these people are because no one ever asks me, when they poll me. I haven't been asked. But people seem to be more confident than we would expect them to be. Right. Now, I'm sure confidence isn't the most sort of technical measurement in the world when it comes to economics, but nonetheless, it's something that you and others have talked about. So I guess my question to start this out is, might we be overconfident? And if so, why?
Okay, well, that ties in with Malcolm Gladwell's talk, which I really liked. Yeah. And I think that, of course, it's also a theme of my new book, Animal Spirits.
Right.
It's the economic fluctuations are, Akerlof and I believe, and apparently you probably also, this vocal minority of people think that apparently variations in confidence drive the economy. Mm. And I'm an academic. I live in a world where nobody believes that, and I suffered the feeling of ostracism or something that comes about.
But you don't let it affect your confidence.
Well, it certainly affects my confidence. But I think maybe Nassim and I are both curmudgeons or cynics at heart. I'm a much milder cynic than Nassim is. but underlying it, there's this smoldering cynicism about the conventional wisdom, which has bothered me for my whole life. Right. And I guess other people are less bothered by it. But in academia, we've developed first of all, I want to be clear that I'm not criticizing the whole economics profession, but those guys who call themselves macroeconomists have developed, and finance theorists have developed this notion of the economy that is just unreal. It has no variations of confidence in it, no humanity in it.
Yeah,
it's all about information processing and stochastic innovations and everyone optimizing. And I was pushed out of our macro program actually at Yale. It's the feeling that it's the conventional wisdom is so strong. I shouldn't say I was pushed out. I was put into another course called Behavioral Economics, and that's an optional course. It's not in the core. Right. And then there are these core exams that everyone studies, and I'm not on that. Right. And so I had an interesting experience. As I say, I interpreted that I was fired by Tim Geithner for my views, but I really don't know that happened. I was on the academic advisory panel for the New York Fed for 14 years. And then we got a new president, Tim Geithner, in 2004. And then I went to one meeting, and I talked about bubbles. I was probably the only one, and my concern about the bubble. And then a few days later, I get this polite phone call from a young lady who said, Secretary Geithner is rotating the panel, and he wants to bring in new blood, and you're no longer needed. So was that because, I'll tell you, I felt very uncomfortable. You know what it is about talking about bubbles and confidence? It's flaky. That's exactly the word. Do you know what that means in academia? It means like, here's some guy who trails off, and he's not basing it on scientific methods.
Right.
The problem, the reason we had so much trouble predicting this is that we got too scientific, and everything had to be based on data.
Or not scientific enough.
Well, it's a question of what is scientific. And to me, I think academics and lots of people misunderstand what science is all about. Maybe you want to take off on that.
I'm a scientist, sorry?
Is economics even science?
They think so.
No.
It is in many ways.
No, ask a scientist if economics is a science, and they tell you that economics makes astrology look excellent, all right? Because, because science as defined by predictive ability.
Tougher than I am.
No.
Tougher.
I like hard science, and physics has done very well predicting phenomena to the 10th decimal precision. Economists don't predict better than cab drivers. Typically a little worse often.
I'm going to be defending our profession here.
So except, of course, my friend Bob Shiller, who's now famous because he's the only one who predicted the housing crisis, and my friend Noriel, who predicted the credit collapse. But you have a severe problem with economics, that we built a society that unfortunately has to depend on incompetent people. Okay, that they are incompetent. We don't have to make the point that they're incompetent. Collectively incompetent, they are. Okay, they're pretty much like medicine in the 19th century. Going to a doctor increases your chance of death. Okay, right. So you have an expert problem, and of course, what we have today, the medicine today that we have today, doesn't come from the top-down academic medicine. It comes from the barbers and surgeons. So we have here an expert problem, a classical expert problem, and we depend too much on economists, and my proposals were to have, from years ago now people are starting to listen to me, a society in which economists can be as incompetent as they want without it affecting you, myself, and even Bob Shiller, all right? So this is what you want. You want a society where you don't have too big to fail, where you don't rely on forecasts, something more organically organized along the laws of nature. Now, as a scientist, I've started now a systematic process of trying to take the assumptions that economists make. The first one with the black swan, I showed the statistical method they use work a lot worse than the statistical method a cab driver would use, all right? The naive statistic he would use, all right? The bell curve and all that stuff on all these metrics and econometrics. That I showed in the black swan. Now we're going next and showing that everything is based on, when you did your PhD, you did optimization, no? Absolutely. Now, Mother Nature doesn't optimize. Something gets fragile from optimization. So they have all these dogmas that one country should specialize in wine, the other one should specialize in cloth, and so on. It doesn't work that way because Mother Nature likes things to be redundant and likes diversity and likes, even within an organism, a huge amount of diversity. It's the exact opposite. The biologist knows the Edelman and Galli result that shows that maximum redundancy is a lot better. Look, you have 2 lungs. I'm sure you do. Even at New Yorker, you have 2 lungs, no? Yeah. 2 kidneys and stuff. So you have a lot of redundancy.
2 kidneys.
An economist would remove one of your lungs. If you had to design a human, they would design a human who wouldn't survive because they'd remove one of your lungs. They say, well, it's too heavy and so on. It's not efficient. Right. All right? One of your kidneys, right. Most of your spare parts, okay? Yeah. Things that you have only in one, I hope they would keep, okay? but they, like your brain and other organs.
2 of everything, yeah.
but you're
Well, not
so you'd have, yeah. So you have so the whole paradigm is messed up empirically and theoretically. So let's not call economics a science, please. All right.
And then you call me too big to fail.
It's not that bad. If you got a point, it's not that bad.
Economist.
I once served on the NSF panel for economics, and we evaluated all the proposals that were coming in, research proposals. And I was in a bad mood. I was feeling like you. But when I read all the panel proposals, I thought, there are a lot of interesting things going on. So, in the profession, and you have I'm in between you two, right? I'm in the middle road here.
Yeah, but
you have a criticism that's valid. They do go off track in academia and in other departments, but there's something solid going on too.
Bob, you said something to me. In 2004, we were in Barcelona, like now, all right? You were sitting to my left, and you said, I agree with the person to your left. I agree with Nassim. Nassim, you have to understand, there's got to be a middle way, all right? And my reaction to you, I told you, I'm not saying crazy things. The world is crazy. It delivered extreme events. That was 2004. Do you still think the same? Think extreme.
Well,
the world has been delivering, okay, over the past 2,000 years, extreme events.
So you made some very important...
So having an extreme point of view is not incompatible with the texture of the world. So you have to make sure, okay, crazy things happen. You've got to be immune to crazy things, all right? So removing economists from the planet would improve the planet, okay? So it's not a crazy proposal. The world is crazy. Look what they drove us into, and how many people, I mean, look at Greenspan, Bernanke, all these methods they use, linear regression, okay, don't work. So it's not that my point is extreme. The world is extreme, and this is outrageous. In 100 years, people blame me, like now already people are blaming me for being too soft on economists.
But I don't think, I mean, are we saying that economists are the only problem here? I mean, in a way...
No, it's both Malcolm Gladwell with his Outliers book and you with your Black Swan book have made a very important point that the so-called normal distribution is an academic conceit. It's not very reliable. We tend to get outlier big events. And unfortunately, it's not easy to be scientific about them. For example, the big event we're going through right now, we haven't seen anything like it since the Great Depression, and that's so long ago that not many of us remember that. Right. And so what academics want to do by instinct is to process data where I have 1,000 observations. But if all 1,000 observations exclude that outlier, they're making a mistake. And I've really wondered why academics continue to ignore this outlier problem.
But that's not just the academics. That's regular people think that.
And the same, it's because they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes. In a sense, I'll tell you about academics. I'm writing a dissertation. I'm a young graduate student. I've got to get on with this. There's this outlier problem. I'm not going to think about that. They keep postponing it because they don't know what to do about it in terms of this framework. The problem is it kind of drives us back to a kind of judgment-oriented approach instead of a statistical approach, and they're not going to do that.
But isn't that human nature and not just academic nature? I mean,
you're right. It's not just. I'm a professor, and I live in an environment.
No, humans are better than academics.
They are.
No, in dealing with outliers. But still, there's one problem. It's not. I mean, let's not misinterpret things. It's not like economists use a bell curve, and there's an alternative. My point is that, and you can show it scientifically or mathematically, rigorously, that there are small probabilities, rare events, cannot lend themselves to mathematical modeling. Simple. Because you have an infinite possibilities, infinite family of models that can fit the same set of observation and the same theory. So so you have a degrees of freedom smelling out of proportion. So my proposal was just not to rely to build something robust to outliers. Very simple. It's not complicated. Cab drivers understand it. When I was a pit trader, I was a trader. I was an option trader in Chicago. Everybody understood it. People, particularly people who were formerly cab drivers and probably in between, because they're going to go bust and go back to cab driving. They understood that there's some risks you don't want to take. Only people who went to the University of Chicago started taking these risks. Right. You see? So they go to, oh no, we can model it and so on. But normal people don't make the sets of mistakes people don't make unless they have a formula.
Too pessimistic, though.
We
have a civilization that's built up by experts, and it works pretty well. Right. And this crisis is not so bad. And so, you know,
this is a wrong generalization. This is a wrong generalization. Saying that we have experts in a dentist as an expert implies automatically that someone can claim expertise in macroeconomic data. This is a extremely dangerous generalization that you're making, right? We have been fighting illusion of control and false experts since the dawn of civilization, okay, with all these charlatans. We've been fighting it, okay? So the fact saying we don't have experts, all right, that are perfect, therefore economists can be imperfect. It's totally bogus argument.
See, it's funny, I end up debating Nassim. I know. I view him as my kindred spirit, but now the point of this conference is for the next 100 days, right? We're going to be giving expert proposals to improve the situation. And you seem to be saying we should call it off right now.
No,
right?
no. I have a clear plan to immunize society from the mistakes of experts. Right. It's very simple. It's so logical to a cab driver, okay? You don't want banks to be too big to fail because you have an expert problem that compounds, okay, geometrically with the size of a unit, okay? You don't want, yes?
In a way, it's a version of pro-cyclical. In your book, Animal Spirits, you talk about that, how people sort of, they will, you know, pursue strategies and everything will reinforce that pursuit over time, their nature and the regulators.
See, now there's another whole aspect of the current crisis that some people at the Financial Stability Forum, at the Squam Lake Group, at the Treasury Department, at many different financial engineers are trying to figure out how to make a system that's less vulnerable to systemic collapse. And we have seen progress in 1913 when the Federal Reserve Bank was created. We saw progress in 1934, was it, when the FDIC brought in deposit insurance. And there is this really technical side to developing a better system.
Do you think it's
happening? And you seem to be referring to that when you said you want to get rid of the too big to fail. We're going to have to use experts to design these things.
Yeah, but which experts? The ones who didn't see the crisis coming? The ones we're using today, Bernanke didn't see the crisis coming. As a matter of fact, he spoke about great moderation when banks were increasing their hidden risks geometrically. I mean, I agree that the things have been done, but let's not go to 1913. Let's go way back. Babylon.
Yeah.
Debt cancellations. We've known, okay, and you know since the Ecclesiast, we've known, ancient Mediterranean societies have always known that debt causes instability. Because with debt, you cannot make a mistake. Islam still bans debt. They say to protect you from yourself, okay? So we need to bring down, if you just brought down the level of debt, I'm sure you'd be satisfied with about a fifth of the level of debt that we have.
Well, the high leverage is a sign of our overconfidence.
Right. Yeah, exactly. How leverage, the problem is that we have too much debt. If you just bring down the level of debt, now what's the government doing? They're asking the banks to lend more and asking people to spend more.
And they're borrowing money.
Sorry?
And they're borrowing money to prop up the over-leveraged institution.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, a Babylonian would have understood it, right? They went through that and came to that conclusion, right? So we still have primitive things. Or read Cicero, okay? Cicero did not want governments to be in debt. Debt creates instability. It creates wars. It creates invasions.
So why are we doing this again? Do the people in Washington realize this and still do otherwise, or are they not aware of this?
It's because they're incrementally moving at this point. So for the next 100 days, we have to think of big changes as you propose. I had a similar, in my book, Subprime Solution, I was talking about a more flexible debt. I called it, in the term of mortgages, I called it continuous workout mortgages. I don't know if this is what you have in mind.
This
is all financial engineering. This is devising a new system.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that it's going to, so the next 100 days, it's actually going to take the next 5 or 10 years.
Right.
We have to respond to this crisis with new institutions. And you're right that some consideration of what form debt takes or what form financial contracts take might be a fundamental way to change the system.
To me, I see it as a no-brainer. It's so obvious that nobody's, of course, because they have PhDs in economics, so they can't see it because it's too obvious. You just convert debt to equity, all right? In 2000, we had that equity bubble. We came out of it almost harmless, unharmed, okay? It was harmless, okay? Look what happened when you have a debt bubble. So converting debt to equity, even on people's homes, it's a no-brainer. It's very easy to do so. And I'm sure it will restart the economy on a solid basis. Right. We won't have that fake growth we had before. Right. We'll have fewer. It won't make investment banks rich, which is, maybe not many people will be bothered with that.
And there's proposals being talked that are analogous to that. There's the proposal for regulatory convertible debt that automatically converts from debt to equity for corporations or banks upon a regulatory event.
Right.
So, I mean, this may actually happen. There is talk
in
motion now.
If they do that, then we have a healthier, okay, my point is that the system's going to break. It still has not. They don't see what's coming, okay? Right. It's like if you have this huge snowball hitting us, okay, and nobody's noticing it. It's going to get a lot worse.
Well, that was my question. Do people notice it? Do people in Washington know this, and are they taking steps to do the things you're talking about, real structural financial things, while on the, in public, saying things just to promote confidence, just to keep us happy long enough for them to tinker with the works behind the scenes, to really fix things? Because I don't know whether we can really tolerate the kinds of things we'd have to go to fix it abruptly right now. I mean, maybe we should, but politically, it's hard for politicians to do because people don't like to take pain.
It's a big thing. Look at the culture we've built. And number one, if you go to business school, they teach you that debt and equity, are interchangeable, and debt is good if you have the edge and so on. How you can increase your return by having debt. I mean, you learn all these bogus things in business school, and so they probably still think that debt is okay. Debt was okay probably in 1980. Debt is no longer possible today. Let me tell you, even the levels we had in 1980 are no longer tolerable today, and let me tell you why. How did you have a run on a bank in 1980? You went and waited in line, okay? A run on a bank took probably weeks. Today, how do you have a run on a bank? Are many of you familiar with this instrument? That's how Iceland was bankrupted, by people pulling their money electronically. So you can have these fads that he's an expert at. They used to take place over a long period of time, now are almost instant. Now, particularly with Twitter, all right? So it's almost instant. So you can no longer you have the variables that we've seen today, the variations we see today. Look, over the past few years, the price of oil from $25 to $150, probably to $5. I don't know what's going next. You see these variations we never experienced in history, never. So we have to be a lot more careful going forward because we have globalization, the internet, and operational efficiency. That creates a lot of variations that cannot accommodate debt. So we have to bring down the level of debt in a lot more drastic way. I don't think they're understanding it. That's the first problem they have. The second point is that their instinct is to go for more regulation. You forget that regulators are the ones who were partly responsible for us getting here by allowing banks to use value at risk or methods to measure the risks of rare events.
That's what
overconfidence. Sorry?
Aren't the stress tests based on the bank's own risk models? Is that true?
It was a variation of it. It's totally incompetent. That was without the regulator, you wouldn't have had that. And the regulators also allowed that AAA nonsense. So I think the instinct to go for more regulation is what they're following now.
Different regulation.
I think better,
better regulation.
I don't know what better regulation means. You're a top-down economist. I'm a bottom-up sort of libertarian. So we have.
I think that what we have, our capitalist system is like a sports game. We invent rules that we operate by, and we have referees. And football, baseball, soccer, any of those, they have referees. And that's what regulators are. And we find that sometimes there's a thing called dangerous play, where somebody's getting hurt. And so we say, okay, we'll just change the rule so that that kind of thing doesn't come up so often. And the players want the regulators, because you don't want to play if things are going on that will injure you or make it impossible to have a good game. And that's where I would have a different emphasis, that we have, over the centuries, developed a regulatory system that many people scoff at, but I think it makes our system work well. And we just have to, this is just another crisis, another opportunity to improve it.
Do you think we're availing ourselves of the opportunity? I guess
for more regulators, the ones who did Basel II, who caused the banks to take the risk.
The problem is that the regulators mess up.
Yeah, they tend to compound the.
But I want to give a kind word for regulators. I think they're not dumb.
The regulators.
They're not any dumber than anyone else.
No. Hold on. I tend to think that they're. For someone, I don't know if you know I hope there's no regulator. Oh, actually, I hope there's a regulator here. Typically, I've met a lot of regulators.
Aren't you out
as an option trader, and they're people you can go around them so easily. Typically, someone I don't know. Do you know many intelligent people who decide to become regulators? Come on.
I've been doing. I've been in the business of issuing securities, and I've had to go to the SEC, and I've met regulators, and I hate to say it, I mean.
You were impressed?
I'm impressed. They seem like, I think that, I talked to someone whose son joined the SEC, and I asked him, why is he doing that? Because he could make more money on Wall Street. And he said, well, my son has kind of an idealistic streak in him, and he doesn't want to be a salesman. He doesn't want to be out there promoting something he doesn't believe in, and that's what you have to do. He just likes it better at the end. I think that's true. I don't think these people... let's hear one cheer for regulators.
That's true, but I was about to say, won't that streak of idealism be beaten out of them at the SEC?
I don't. At the SEC they have so many rules, and in our dealing with them, it's always fitting into one of their categories of rules, and you can't do that because of Rule 147A, and it sounds like nonsense. But I do think that it attracts people who want. The SEC is a strength in this country because it is trying to get the markets working right, and there's so many people who would take advantage of you, and try to conceal facts and delude you. And the SEC is one institution that, if we didn't have it, our financial system wouldn't work so well.
Let me deliver a note a little bit. I think
I love Nassim's books.
I haven't seen anything that convinces me that the situation is better today than it was before you guys started calling this a crisis. Okay.
Right.
I haven't seen anything convincing. I think that they don't understand nonlinearities. They don't understand that that if you keep having 600,000 unemployed people in the U.S. and in China and in France, that at some point it may cause a snowball effect to accelerate. They don't seem to realize that monetary policy is nonlinear. In other words, you pump money, you get nothing. You pump money, you get nothing. You pump money, you get nothing. Like Malcolm's tipping point story of the ketchup bottle. You pour ketchup, nothing's coming out, and then suddenly the whole table is full of ketchup. Okay, right. There you may have hyperinflation. All right. So now the trade-off where I'm heading because of the system, we're either going to get massive deflation or hyperinflation. I see absolutely no possibility of anything in the middle. Because a small little error in policy, okay, can compound one way or another.
Well, I suppose we all hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm wrong. I'm the first one to hope to be wrong.
Some of us may believe that you're
wrong. We are going through a very experimental time right now. And just as Roosevelt did, now it's not Obama, it's more Bernanke who's being the great experimenter. And he's doing things whose outcomes are yet unknown, but I think they're well-intentioned.
Well-intentioned.
Yeah, just like his idea of calling what we had, all this risk taken by banks, all right, calling it, oh, we don't have risk in the system, it's a great moderation. That was well-intentioned as well. We need to be protected.
He didn't predict this crisis at all. Yeah.
No, it's not. He didn't predict it. He condoned that hidden risk-taking by bank when people like me were barking, all right? This is impossible. This is too much risk. The methods don't work, okay? They're taking risks, and he was part of the people who condoned it. I want him out of there. Someone who crashed a plane, you don't give him a new plane, and that's what you're doing. You want us to do.
We have to stop. Sorry.
Right.
I end up debating him. It's not. We're on the same side.
It's like pro wrestling. It's all fake. Back there, they get along famously. Anyway, I'm afraid we're done. You know, we could talk about this for 30 days, but we only had 30 minutes. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.